Dr. Laura just reminded me, this ain't your mama's church, doing Stevie Wonder and Higher Ground. Oh yeah, no way. But I know there are people who grew up in this philosophy, so I apologize because this is your mama's church. I know, we know. Oh my God. Well, welcome again to our center. It's so nice to be with all of you today. So for my Jewish friends, we know that this is a big holiday week because it is Passover on Saturday night, right? And we're having a Passover Seder here in a week from Wednesday if we get enough of you to sign up. I have so many Passover stories that I could bore you to death from my own childhood, but I'm just going to do a teeny one today just to kind of get your energy going. So this picture is it's matzah. For those of you that don't even know, why does she have crackers up there? This is called matzah, and we eat it on the Passover holiday, and I'll tell you a little bit more about why we do that. And I remember my friends, my non-Jewish friends, when I was a schoolgirl, they would say, "God, you're so lucky. That matzah looks so good. You get to eat it for a whole week." And I would turn 10 shades of green when they would say that. I would say, you know what, matzah is awful. I'll just say it's awful. We don't we slather it with butter and salt and whatever we can put on there to kind of make it, somewhat digestible. But it doesn't work. I hate to tell you, there's just no way you can dress up matzah. I'm here to tell you no. And in our home, we were huge bread eaters. We loved our bread. That's just who the Olanskys were. And so we did our best to do the matzah thing, but I think day 2, the bagels were coming out again. So it wasn't fun. That was not a fun part of the holiday. But, I do love Passover, and it was fun as a kid. You sit around the table, and my father used to say, "Are you all ready for your trip through the desert?" Because it's a to-do. It's a journey through the desert and the story of how the Jews were liberated from Egypt. But as a little girl, I really didn't know the metaphysical meaning of Passover because we didn't teach science of mind when I was a little girl at our household. So I didn't learn that there's a way, way deeper meaning to Passover. And I am so grateful that I came into a spiritual tradition and philosophy that is so metaphysically grounded, because now I get to teach Passover my way, which is all about the meaning of this holiday that we all can relate to. So that's what I'm going to do today. So basically, stop with the Hanukkah. Passover. The Passover story is the story of moving from bondage to freedom. Because the story is that the Jewish people were slaves in Egypt, and they were abused, they were kept away from their religion. And so one day, this wonderful prophet came through named Moses, and he said, "Let my people go." And there were some other things he did to coerce, or motivate the Pharaoh, who was like the king, to motivate the Pharaoh to free the Jewish people. And after some things, some plagues, some this, some that, the Pharaoh said, "Jews, you can go." And so the Jews left, and they went to the promised land, which is Israel. So it's really the story about their liberation. But to us on a deeper level, we're going to talk about what this holiday can mean for you as well. So Moses, metaphysically, is about divine law. And I've got some quotes here from Charles Fillmore, who we talked in the religions, the religions this morning about unity. And he and his wife Myrtle brought unity to the world. And he wrote this wonderful book, and I know this is going to bore all of you. He wrote this wonderful book called the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. And that is my go-to whenever I want to bring these Bible passages or ideas to life. I go there because he brings out something we can all relate with. So Moses, this Moses guy, he represents divine love. And Charles Fillmore says the birth of Moses represents man's development in consciousness of the law of his being. And I mentioned when I was talking earlier that humanity didn't really know about spiritual law. So we were kind of in a place of darkness, because if you're not looking at spiritual law or acknowledging it exists, it's kind of a powerless feeling. But when you learn that there's this thing called spiritual law and you can use it, then life changes. And so Moses was that symbol of spiritual law. Because here we were in Israel, just in this dark place. We didn't have power. We were very powerless. And then this guy comes up and says, there is spiritual law. and you can use it. And we're going to use that law to free us from the bondage of this darkness. So Moses is a really important part for us symbolically, because don't we all fall into darkness sometimes? We're going to talk a lot about that in my talk, about how we navigate that and how spiritual law can pull us through. So Charles Fillmore says the Israelites in Egyptian slavery represent thoughts that once had the illumination of spirit. So he's recognizing that there was a time for us in our consciousness when we were filled with light. But Egypt represents when the light turned dim. He goes on to say, but the illumination of spirit, but that have gone down into and have become obscured by matter and material conditions. So a lot of what Egypt means to us is a place where we only see the physical reality. We're so hypnotized and engaged with the physical reality being our power and being all there is, just this, no spiritual laws, no spirit right there inside of ourselves, just what you see. And that's a really dark place. It's a really dark place. I can't imagine feeling that way, even though there's been a time in my life where I lived in Egypt inside my soul. So this is what the Egyptians and the Israelites was all about. So the story of Passover is about spiritual evolution. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? It's about spiritual evolution because it's about our coming into a place of living in a dark consciousness and moving into a consciousness of light. Take that to your Seder and teach it around the table. So there's this idea called the Promised Land, and I love this picture. Just came out when I was on my program, and I love it because it shows this barren land and then this lush land. And this is really what this story of Passover is about, moving from a barren place to a lush, rich place. And spiritually speaking, obviously, a barren place is where we have no spiritual identity or spiritual connection. And moving into a lush place is where we fully know who we are spiritually. And we're in that zone of knowing that all is provided for us. The Promised Land is a fertile and abundant region promised to the Israelites by God, symbolizing a place of prosperity and plenty. When I read that, I said, where have I heard that before? This room. This room is what we teach. The Promised Land is inside of you. The Promised Land is knowing that there is a power and presence inside of you that you are, that takes care of all that you require to live your greatest life. Whether it's food, whether it's friends, whether it's love, whether it's a great place to live, everything and anything you are provided for when you recognize that that Promised Land exists inside of you. And that can be a big teach. I mean, there are times we're going through stuff. You say Promised Land is inside of me. I have no idea what the heck you're saying. So there is something to this journey. And this journey is from here to there. And where is there, right? But how many times in our lives do we find ourselves in an experience that hurts? Or an experience that's confused us? Or an experience that's really thrown us off our center? And we feel like we're here and we don't want to be here anymore. We want to be there, right? We want to be there where it feels better. We want to be there where we feel loved, where we feel rich inside of ourselves, where we feel like everything's working perfectly. And so this Passover story is a story that we are continually taking in life. It's not a one and done. We have the Passover story happening all the time in our lives, our loved ones. It's just kind of like a part of life. And that's one really great thing about these Bible stories. They're just teaching us about everyday life, how to cope, how to navigate, how to find your higher power. That's what these stories are telling us. They're not really meant to hurt us or condemn us or make us feel guilty. They're there to empower us and inspire us to see that this life, when we're following spiritual law, when we're paying attention to the heart, to the soul, to oneness, when we're in that zone that we teach here, life is so much better. And so this journey from here to there is what we're on quite a lot of times in our lives. Paramahansa Yogananda says, mankind is engaged in an eternal quest for that something else. he hopes will bring him happiness, complete and unending. Aren't we looking for that a lot? I think we are. I think a lot of us are looking for that place, that something else that's going to make me feel better about myself. I see it all the time. You can see it everywhere in people and in what the collective is engaged in. Something else to make me feel better. He goes on to say, for those individual souls who have sought and found God, and I want to just say something about the word God. I know not everybody likes that word. I get it. Substitute it for something else if it doesn't work for you. Say higher power, love, whatever works for you, substitute it. Because I want you to be able to feel what I'm saying and embody it and put it to work in your life. And I don't want one word to stand in the way of that. So he goes on to say, the search is over when we found that place. He is that something else. We are that something else. It's inside of us. We are never separated from us. And this is the journey of finding the something else is right where you are right now. So I know that the journey to finding that sweet spot isn't always easy. It might take a little time. It would be really fun if it just happened in a moment. If I just said the promised land is right inside of me, boom, all my troubles are gone. I know that's not realistic. I get it. In the Passover story, it took 10 plagues from God to finally convince the Pharaoh, which is like our ego, our fear, our attachment to this, to the physical. 10 plagues to disentangle that ego to be able to leave that place where we are imprisoned, right? So it is a little sticky. And I think it's important for us to know that, because I know there are some people that come into our philosophy and we say, oh, just do this and you'll be all better. I get it. Not that easy sometimes. So let's recognize it might take a little time. Your consciousness might need to be softened a little bit. You might have to go through a little opening up and a receptivity to what we teach here. I know it took me some time, but man, I was just totally setting an intention that I want to feel that, because I liked what I saw people who lived this philosophy experienced. So the golden calf is another example of how it might take a little time. Does anybody know the story of the golden calf? Okay. So in a nutshell, what happened? So after the Israelites were freed from Egypt, Moses guiding them there, the spiritual law symbol, guiding them through the desert, Moses was called by God on high to go up Mount Sinai and get the 10 Commandments. Has anybody here seen The History of the World Part 1 by Mel Brooks? Oh my God, I was watching it. So Mel Brooks is he's so funny. He goes up to Mount Sinai and God says, Moses, do you hear me? And Mel Brooks goes, yes, I hear you. And then he says, a deaf man can hear you. It was so funny. And then, this is a really funny part. So there's 10 commandments, as you know. So in The History of the World Part 1, he comes down with 15 commandments. And so he's getting ready to present it to the Israelites. And he goes, I present to you the 15, oops. And he drops one of the tablets. And he goes, the 10 commandments. It was such... one thing I love about my heritage and the Jewish people is they are really good at making fun of God. They really do, and their relationship to God. And my father, he is so funny. He used to, and this is kind of what I've learned about God. I think why I had more of an openness to kind of seeing spirit as something that I could kind of like have a relationship with or have a oneness experience with. My dad used to say that God tells him what to do. He would say, I'm going to go talk to God now, so I'm not sure he wants you to do that. And I love that because my dad taught me to have a joking relationship with spirit. And I think the Jewish people have a tendency in their relationship to do the same thing, to really make fun so that we can lighten up that heaviness. So anyways, back to my story. So while Moses was up on the mountain getting the 10 Commandments, 40 days and 40 nights, the Jewish people got a little restless. See, they weren't quite spiritually evolved yet. They were insecure about spirit. They were still into needing spirit to be something tangible and physical. So they decided to make a golden calf with the help of Aaron. So they put all their jewelry together, all their gold, and they smelted it down, and they made this golden calf. And so they were worshiping that golden calf, and Moses comes down the mountains with the 10 Commandments, and boy, he was mad. He's like, you can imagine, Jews, you saw all these miracles in Egypt. You saw the 10 plagues, the parting of the Red Sea. Wasn't that enough to teach you that there's an invisible presence and power that takes good care of you? You got to reduce yourself now to worshiping a golden calf? And so he's pissed off, right? And he breaks everything. It's just really bad. It was just a really bad scene for the Jewish people because, they felt bad. They were just having fun. And then Moses had to ruin the party by getting mad at them and saying they didn't learn the lesson. They haven't spiritually evolved to see that spirit is invisible. But it tells the story about how challenging it can be to move our consciousness. Because sometimes it doesn't happen with a snap. Sometimes we need to evolve a little bit more to deepen that connection. And we need to cut ourselves some slack and give us permission and space to open up, to expand to our receptivity to what that higher power is to us. So the motivation to begin this journey usually begins with suffering. And I was hesitant to even bring that word in here because we have such an aversion to suffering, don't we? Naturally speaking, nobody likes to suffer. But usually, it's what motivates us to take a journey from here to there. And some of it is just as easy as being disgruntled with what you're doing in life. That can cause suffering. You're not happy where you are. Sometimes it's a loss of somebody you love dearly. So there's many ways that the journey begins. Buddha says that the root of suffering is attachment. I think the Passover story is a perfect symbol of that. Because in that state of Egypt, we are so attached. We're so attached to everything, to the victim consciousness that exists when you're feeling enslaved. We're just really attached, and we're not seeing a bigger picture. And we can see that in our own lives, too. When we're really attached to something and it's making us not feel good, we got to let go, right? That's how we stop suffering. We stop being attached. And I know I don't like doing that. I like being attached to everything. I am like that, I will tell you. But I always know it's like there comes this moment where I stop being attached, and it's like, why didn't I do that a long time ago? I was causing my own suffering. So letting go of the attachment that is causing us the suffering brings our journey forward. I've looked up the word suffer. I love etymology. I love finding out where words come from. And in my dictionary, it said suffer means to bring or carry, right? So it kind of dives into that whole idea of attachment. When we're carrying something that's burdensome, we suffer. And that's a consciousness. That's a consciousness. And it all takes place in consciousness. If we're carrying something that's too heavy, where we're feeling like we're in it alone, and it's all on our shoulders, we suffer. And so how do we stop suffering? We put it down. How many people are good at putting stuff down? A lot of you? I got two. That's good. But yeah, and you know what? I love to talk about this with all of you because you see that we're all kind of the same. We all do this stuff. And we're here to tell you to stop. Eckhart Tolle said, suffering has a noble purpose, the evolution of consciousness and the burning up of the ego. The ego has a lot of definitions. I'm not going to get into that here. But ego really, if you want to just distill it to one thing, it's fear. It's fear. And it keeps us locked in. I agree that we need the ego to navigate through life, right? We need the ego to keep us in alignment with what we're doing so that we know what we need to do to pay bills, to present, to do whatever it is that we do in this life, to connect to people, to have conversation. I get it. But there comes a point sometimes in life where that ego is driving us crazy, right? And so suffering helps us to see what we're holding on to, what we're attached to, so that we can burn it up and have that spiritual expansion, because that's where the journey takes us. Ernest Holmes says, and so we suffer, not because suffering is imposed upon us, but because we're ignorant of our true nature. Perfect. When we are ignorant that our true nature is spirit, incarnate, that's who we are all expressions of spirit. When we don't pay attention to that, when we're ignorant of that, when we forget about that, when we block that, we are suffering. It's not imposed by anybody on the outside. It is us. It is us. So yes, it is a choice, because when you're suffering, you can stop suffering by doing your work. Again, I'm not telling you can suffer by just saying, okay, I'm going to stop now. I know there takes time sometimes. But our true nature that is this promised land, when we really know that and live in that consciousness, suffering is alleviated. or minimized. We're just not in that energy because we see how amazing life is. We see the power that we are. We see that there are vast possibilities for us to create an amazing life when we see anything is possible if I believe it is. Eckhart Tolle says, suffering is necessary until you realize it is unnecessary. I love that. I love that, right? It's like, what? Do you ever find yourself just going, why did I do that? I do that all the time. It's like, what was I doing? Again. But it is a choice. It is a choice. And you may be fighting me on this and going, well, it isn't a choice that I'm suffering because my leg hurts. No, I believe that if you know who you are spiritually, that suffering can be alleviated. Just surrender it to Spirit. Which brings me to surrendering to Spirit. I just wanted to give you some little tips about the journey from here to there. Surrendering to Spirit is the perfect place to start. Because when we are engulfed in suffering, in the darkness, not seeing the presence of Spirit, when we are there, if we surrender that thinking, that attachment, that belief, surrender it to God, boy, do we open the world. We open our energy up. We open up a flow of information, of inspiration. Have any of you ever said, I surrender to Spirit? Have you ever tried that in your own homes? Right? Doesn't it feel good? Sometimes it takes a lot to get us there. It's like we try everything in our rational mind to make things happen, to change, to do this, and then we finally go, I surrender, God. It's like the parting of the clouds and the angels singing from on high. It's like, whoa. I love surrendering because it allows for something bigger to show me the way. And that's powerful. So we want to move forward even though your destination is unknown. We get so hung up on wanting to know, where am I going? Let's get comfortable with not knowing. Because when we don't know, but we trust, if I've surrendered to Spirit and I trust it's guiding me rightly, how lovely is that? How lovely is that? I have done that numerous times in my life, and it always turns out so much better than if I had tried to create it through my limited thinking. So just being comfortable with the not knowing, which leads me to emptiness. Emptiness, I'm sorry, it is a part of this journey, and it's really an important part. Because when we are in a state of darkness and we're ready to move from here to there is going to be some solitude and emptiness because we're letting go. We're letting go and we're allowing something bigger to show us back to that place inside that's wholeness. And so we call it liminal space. I love that word, liminal space. It's that place from here to, that's the in-between. We've all been through it. All of us have been through it. It happens whenever we have a change in life. A loss, something shifts, something moves, and we're in a place of, oh my God, now what, right? It's a really important part. It was so cool. Somebody sent me this article that's like about brain science, and it was talking about liminal space, and it said that the way that our brains are like wired, that liminal space is really important because it allows for this like neuron recalibration and reset. That's really important because we've all had to move through stuff in life. None of us have the same life we had 25 years ago. So we've had change, and look, we've made it through the change, and I'm going to say even better, right? So it's a part of this whole transformation. So being in that space of just allowing Spirit in, because liminal space opens our connection to Spirit because we're quiet. We're in a quiet zone, and we can hear better. And it also clears the space for the new to rise in. So when you realize the promised land is within you, then you've arrived at there. You've moved from here to there. Because honestly, you haven't moved in physical reality, have you? You've moved in consciousness. And something big that we teach here is about the movement of consciousness. When we pray, we are moving consciousness because your consciousness creates your reality. And so when you're in an experience of needing to move from here to there, because here is suffering and sorrow, just know inside of you, when you make that declaration that I need to move from here to there, I am already there. I just got to get my whole act together, my mind together to realize that that promised land is fully intact. And I honor the journey, though, because journeys are what we do here on planet Earth. If we are attuned to God, our perception is limitless. pervading everywhere in the oceanic flow of the divine presence. Isn't that beautiful? Because that land of Egypt is really constrictive, black, dark, it's horrible. But when we remember who we are, when we're tuned into spirit, we are unlimited. We can breathe. We're in spaciousness. We're in possibility. When the spirit is known and we know ourselves as spirit, which we are, there is no land or sea, no earth or sky. All is he. Again, I apologize that that's personified God. You can say all is it, all is spirit. But it is. When we realize that this whole thing about time and space and this and that and earth and sky, we're beyond all of that. We're bigger than all of that. And when we know that, we're in a place in which all good is present and just waiting to come forward. So the melting of everything in spirit is a state no one can describe, right? When we do the sound bowls, we go into a place where there is just sound and there's frequency, but it's indescribable. It's a feeling, and that's what that state of being one as spirit, that's what it feels like. Words don't cut it. Feeling is where it's at. It really is. And there's more evidence showing that when we feel big, really big, open, loving feelings, we change. We bring love into our lives. We bring love into the world. So finding that spot of knowing who you are is the key. A great bliss is felt, eternal fullness of joy and knowledge and love. Really, the road, this journey, takes you back home to your spiritual awareness of you. The journey from here to there, the Passover journey, is just teaching us how to navigate through the darkness of life. And to remind us, as Dr. Tom said, don't build a condo there. Don't build a condo in Egypt. It is not a good place to build a condo. But that's what the big teach is here. And I'm with you, man. I mean, I've had my troubles in life, and sometimes I get really stuck. I get really stuck there. But when I came into this center, I realized that it is just one place on my journey through life, that I don't stay stuck there, because I know that there is a power and a presence called spirit that I am. And when I recognize that, when I live there, then the journey is something that is really just in my mind. And I give myself the time that I need to take that journey from here to there, knowing that there is already here. Thank you for listening and have a great day. Thank you.